Affairs, agency, aging. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Stephanie Thoma, and I typically do episodes on personal and professional development, original music, travel, and a lot more. Today, we're actually diving into a couple of films that I recently saw that have striking similarities. One of them is the classic 1967 The Graduate. The other is the 2017 Woody Allen film Wonder Wheel. I'm going to read verbatim what each is about. The Graduate. Benjamin Braddock, Dustin Hoffman, has just finished college and back at his parents' house. He's trying to avoid the question everyone keeps asking. What does he want to do with his life? An unexpected division crops up when he is seduced by Mrs. Robinson and Bancroft, a bored housewife and friend of his parents. But what begins as fun turns complicated when Benjamin falls for the one woman Mrs. Robinson demanded he stay away from, her daughter, Elaine, who is Catherine Ross. Now we have Wonder Wheel. Four people's lives intertwine amid the hustle and bustle of the Coney Island amusement park in the 1950s. Ginny, an emotionally volatile former actress, now working as a waitress in a clam house, Humpty, Ginny's rough-honed carousel operator husband, Mickey, a handsome young lifeguard who dreams of becoming a playwright, and Carolina, Humpty's long-estranged daughter, who is now hiding out from gangsters at her father's apartment. These films were produced 50 years apart. They had vastly different receptions. Graduate, that came out in 1967, has an 87% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it brought in 104 in the box office. Meanwhile, Wonder Wheel has a 31% Rotten Tomatoes rating and brought in $15.9 million to the box office. This is certainly going to contain spoilers. I couldn't help but notice that both tales were told from the young male's point of view. And both of these males were having affairs with married women. And in both cases, the truth ultimately comes out. When it comes to The Graduate, of course, that's a little bit different because he was seduced by Mrs. Robinson, that classic song by Simon and Garfunkel. If you've ever heard of that song, it was actually written for the soundtrack. The soundtrack for The Graduate is purely Simon and Garfunkel songs. And it tells a story of this guy who is really at a loss, what he wants to do with his life. He's been following the trajectory set out for him by his parents, and then he finds himself in a very interesting situation where he is more or less seduced into a summer of having fun with this housewife. And who would have thought that he would ultimately hit it off really well with her daughter? And alternatively, Wonder Wheel, it's a little bit different because this isn't the woman's daughter, but her stepdaughter. So in both of these situations, these women are married and not loving it. They are settling in some regard in their marriage, and they're looking for, in the case of Mrs. Robinson, more gratification on a physical level. And then when it comes to Ginny in Wonder Wheel, she is looking for that deep emotional connection that she has with the main character. I'd say Wonder Wheel was a little more predictable just because you happen to know that the daughter, she got into a relationship with a gangster and things didn't really pan out very well. So she's wanted, people are looking for her. She's more or less hiding out. Whereas in The Graduate, that young woman is college bound and sort of figuring her stuff out, but not really in a dire situation that we know of. She has her whole life ahead of her. And interestingly enough, in both scenarios, it's very clear that the male protagonist is having a physical relationship with the moms and falling in love with the daughter. And both of them seem to not really think that it's impossible to get with the daughter after this scenario. And both of the daughters, understandably, when it comes to light, they both have adverse reactions. They're taken aback and not loving the fact that, oh, you were with my, stepmom or my actual mom. Not the most ideal situation for most women, let me say. What is so interesting about The Graduate, I understand now why it has a cult following, because it goes off the rails. It goes off the script. I did mention there would be spoilers here. What are the chances that this protagonist becomes a stalker against everyone's wishes? Oh, and let's also throw in there that Mrs. Robinson is the wife of the business partner of his dad. So he's really throwing all caution to the wind and becomes a stalker at her college. And then eventually gets wind of her pending marriage, interrupts the wedding, and surprisingly to me, at least at that time, she ends up running away with him in a really crazy series of events. When it turns out that I think she just doesn't want to be controlled. And then let's skip on over to the other ending with the truth comes out, where Mickey is in love with Carolina. So he asks her out on a date. And on their first date, he said how much he loves her. And it's obviously infatuation. And then he does put it out there that, oh, by the way, I had this situation. She's immediately distraught. Oh my gosh, my dad finding out about this, it's over. And then she ends up going on a walk. There are some other things involved, but in case you see it, not going to go there. She doesn't make it home. Remember, people were looking for her. So the truth doesn't come out through and through like it does in The Graduate. And it doesn't necessarily have that epic ending of people running away together, even though that probably would have been a good idea for her to do because she was actually on the run. So I can imagine that Woody Allen saw this film, The Graduate, and took bits and pieces and turned some pieces on their head in this film. But ultimately, there are tropes of intergenerational relationships and the different intentionalities there, emotional and or physical. The new generation not being ruled by fear or taboos. And there's an emphasis on the beach and water, and The Graduate is California. And then we have Coney Island and Wonder Wheel. That's this sort of gritty establishment where people are supposed to go there to have fun. So we have the institutions of colleges like UC Berkeley in the California The Graduate. There is this underlying academic focus of the way that things should be. And then we have the sort of mystical wonderland of this family living on Coney Island where things are not as they appear. So let me know if you've seen both or maybe just one of them. And if you'd like more addressing parallels between different classic and maybe not so classic films, let me know. Wishing you a wonderfully curious day. Until next time.